morning, everyone. Happy Sunday. Hope you're all well. Often as I do last minute, well, not last minute, get up about an hour and a half before and think about what I'm going to say a little bit, sometimes. And sometimes a lot comes to me. And this was sort of one of those days where really a lot flowed through, a lot more than what I thought I was going to say. And so I sent out a little message to everyone, hoping they would log on as this was sort of shaping up. So I hope everybody's been practicing. As always, I've been stressing the importance to take that time to grow. And this week's teaching is going to be an example of the fruits, the attainment, the reward, for lack of a better word, of the time and effort we put in. It's sort of shows the way to the sort of Learjet and the cosmic starship of awareness. So why don't we take a moment and line ourselves up, as I will, sort of scrambling to log on, and just align ourselves, and we will begin. Okay. Special thank you for those who got my message on YouTube and sort of dropped everything to log on. So it comes to alignment. Alignment, 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 and again, alignment. So when I took this pause a moment ago, I hadn't had the chance to fully prepare as I normally was, because I was adding some organizational things to my notes to make sure everything was in order. Hopefully it is. So I prepared. I needed a cool glass of water next to me as I teach. I needed to do a few other things. So I was prepared and aligned. Then I sat down for about a minute or two, well, under a minute, took a couple deep breaths. Well, I stretched a little bit. Make sure, even though I'm seated down, as I teach better when I'm seated, I still stretch, so the energy flowed. And then I put my hands together and I prayed. I used the mantra, the name of God that I use, asked for guidance. And as I'm able to do, I shot my kundalini through the top of my head and lined up on my third eye and centered into my awareness. And release thoughts. Preparation. A lot of what I'm going to teach today requires preparation. Practice, time, instruction. Learning to find that alignment, that central alignment into the central column. If you look at your video, I'll friend the tree of life. The center, where things flow. It takes preparation. You create the situation, quiet, window open, fresh air, clear glass of water, stretch, stop the rush, so you could drop in, sink in, be calm. You steady the waves, the movement, any anxiety, any fear of messing up. And you let go into the space. But this structure, knowledge, years of knowledge, practice on how to speak, how to convey thoughts accurately, notes, sometimes no notes. And I share this because this is what we do ourselves in our practice. We prepare, we listen. You're listening to me for guidance. We have any listening you've done in past in religious studies or going to services or everything you've sort of done or read about or learned about God, religion, spirituality, yoga, all that stuff. And you've taken time to do it. There's a preparation. you just don't leap into something off the deep end of the pool. You make sure the conditions are correct. And it's a step-by-step process. You can't just leap in. You learn to practice to swim. And then you let go. And then you're swimming. Right? And you take the time to align. Even if you're a very good swimmer, you make sure the heater's on. Unless you like swimming in a very, very cold pool. You put on your swimsuit. You have your goggles. You take that moment to step back, to enter into your alignment, that everything falls into place as you go into the act of swimming. Yes? I lead into this because at the end, we're going into 8th gear to show people, again, where we're headed, to give encouragement and sort of seeing the beauty and the incredible place we can all live from. But we cannot forget, this is the big red flag to this teaching, that to get there takes preparation and care and practice, the watching of our actions, our thoughts, lining up our emotions, working with our sephirots and our subtle, more energy body that's underneath the sephirots. That's the veins where the sap runs in our tree of life, right? The energy through our nerves, our blood, right? Our channels, our energy channels, yes? We work with all that to be able to get to where I'm pointing out today. We do not bypass that. It's a natural progression to what I'm going to be speaking about. There's no quick way. There are faster ways. But there's always that path. There's no magic pill here. If they were, I would have given it to you day one and said, that's it. You're good to go. It doesn't exist. Unless you're born that way, and that's so beyond where, I don't think necessarily there's even, well, there could be one per generation, and I'm talking a generation of 7 billion people on this planet. Or there's a lot of them and they're all hiding. But chances are that we're one of them, and really slim. So don't think you are. Some people do. But no. Our actions, our thoughts, everything is ethical and moral and aligned. That's living in complete perfection. Right? How many of us live in perfection? I don't. I don't think any of my teachers did. And they were far, far advanced. So, we're going to hop into this. That all being said. So, we've been discussing the tree of life. Beautiful teaching. Working with the stages, right? Jacob's ladder. Working up and down, it's a path. It's the rungs, the levels of the ladder going up to different levels of attainment and knowledge, right? And then there's the chariot, Merkava chariot we discuss. Sort of the energy that goes through the channel that we can ride and be in complete presence and union. So, in a way, what I'm discussing is the attainment that's described by the chariot, that working in union, the presence. There was a picture that I don't think I shared. One moment, let me see if I could find it. See if I want to share it. I want to look at it again. There's a reason I didn't share it initially, but after we've discussed things for a while, it may work better than originally when I looked at it. Here we are. No, it's still, the imagery is not quite right. But the sense, when I saw the teaching of all the eyes in the trees, in the vision, which I described a couple weeks ago, there was the eye of union with divinity, and the whole chariot moved with divine intent. The intent of Hashem, his thought moved the chariot effortlessly. The animals, beings with the four heads, moved in alignment with strength and wisdom, with that divine alignment. They were in union. And so this teaching is going to sort of move along those lines and talk about fruition, the goal, the ultimate alignment of living in the central channel. So last week, so this teaching is really going to discuss about moving from working to attain balance to effortless realignment. But the effortless begins sort of after we put in the effort. At some point when you learn to swim, there's a lot of effort. You need a swim coach. You need the right environment, the pool not too hot, not too cold, not windy. It's not the sea with the waves and the current and little animals or big animals that could go bump in the water, right? This is after you hit a certain level, it becomes effortless. So last week we're discussing a little bit the path again, how to attain a focused stability of mind, and how balance is essential. By meditating, being in a fixed place, looking at our altar to provide an anchor, working with our breath, focusing on an inhale, exhale as an anchor, something to anchor our mind and our thoughts so it's not flying everywhere, right? Where we put our awareness helps anchor our mind to where we place it, correct? We placed it in our body, our feelings, or where we have tension. We're going to work more on finding relaxation where we have tension. I found it personally that my practice went to the ninth gear when I started placing my awareness into my body and into my mind. It allowed me to engage directly with the energy flow, which calmed my mind and my thoughts. I went deeper, as opposed to engaging with surface level. Working with mantra works directly, working with the recitation of the name of God, which I'm calling mantra, it's what it is, right? The recitation of a name works directly with the energy flow that's beneath our body. One moment, let me pull up a definition again. There we go. So mantra, defined, is a sacred word or phrase, a combination of words, or a sequence of syllables that is recited, chanted, or meditated upon to invoke divine presence, which encourages inner transformation and alignment of consciousness with higher spiritual realities. The mantra, the name, so the name of God recited, is considered to have intrinsic, that means embodied in it, in its very essence, intrinsic spiritual power, which acts as a vessel, as like a chariot, right? Something that carries something. So a vessel of divine energy that purifies the mind, elevates the soul, brings up the soul, and creates a bridge between us and God. So that's what a mantra is. So we worked with mantra on how to regain a balance in our body and to bring our mind back to the present. Disciplining the mind. Teaching our mind to come to heel like a dog. Pulling it back so it walks beside us and follows us. We turn to the right. The dog is right by our side, turns to the right. The dog needs to go to the bathroom. It's almost asking for permission. We feel it slightly tug off to the side, but it's not yanking us, right? The mind indicates, oh, I'm a little hungry, your body's hungry, you need to eat. But we have the discipline, and the mind has the discipline on waiting for us to have a permission. It's not a run to the kitchen because it's a compulsive desire to eat. Do you see? And by meditating, we learn to teach our mind to come back to the object of our awareness. We're disciplining the mind. We're like taking its leash and just gently, it's not a pull, bringing it back to where we have decided we wish to focus. Do you see? Our mind is no longer running away with us. We are the rider on our horse. Our horse comes into balance. We learn the discipline of being able to have the control through our practice. Yes? Picture coming up. Right? We are in the center of our central channel. The Shekhinah flows. Divine unity is at our core. But the horseman needs to learn how to ride a horse. The horseman needs to learn how to walk upright to get to the horse. The horse needs to be trained. I don't know if people have seen people get on top of horses to train them. I once trained a semi-wild horse. I loved it. Everybody around me was horrified. Within 30 seconds, the horse bucked 15 times to throw me off. But with time, the horse calmed down and trusted me. I showed it love. I showed it care. It trusted my guidance that I wouldn't hurt it, and it came to love being ridden. But it took practice. Horses are very noble, highly intelligent animals, as well as extremely strong. But there's a path on getting to where you're a very competent horseman. And that's what we're learning. To be the consciousness that rides our thoughts, and our thoughts are not riding us. To be the consciousness that controls our brain, and our brain doesn't control us, nor does our emotions, nor does really anything else. The horseman and his horse can ride through storms, through dust storms, sandstorms in the desert, can ride across rivers, can ride through the night. A horseman can fall asleep on his horse and trust that the horse is going to stay on the path, or that the horse knows the way home, because it's trained and there's an alignment and a confidence. They feel each other. I used to ride without a saddle. It takes practice. First time I did it, I fell off literally 15 times in a minute and got back on. But you learn that balance, that equilibrium. The horse knows you don't have a saddle, so it doesn't move in aggressive movements. It doesn't buck, because it knows you'll slide right off. This was the same horse that was semi-wild a couple months before. We worked in unison. And I really felt it because its bare skin was against my jeans. I had nothing to hold up my legs but my balance, and we galloped, we ran. Horse went fast, but it learned to slow down slowly so I didn't go flying over its head. And that is the sort of thing we come to be able to master in our lives. We're learning to master ourselves. Our human condition, our karma, our mitzvah, our imbalances, and learning to become whole again. The horseman on his horse is our birthright of complete alignment in our lives, in our world, in our families. Doesn't mean there's perfection around us. Doesn't mean the horseman is galloping through paradise. There's crazy all around. But what he can't control is himself and the union with the energy, with presence, and with intelligence, which is symbolized by the horse, and which horse have all those qualities in abundance. Yes. So last week, we were working on that. Keep working on that. It's weight training. The more you do it, the easier it is, and the more able you will be able to do it, and the more enjoying it is. I used to look forward to my meditation sessions, and they would last an hour or two, but I always, at least 40, 45 minutes. And I looked forward to it because I felt such relief. And the next day I was focused. Work went easier. Things didn't affect me. I became happier. I became more aligned. Because I learned to work on having the right discipline, the right the right constriction, but also having an openness to a flow and the dance of life. So I wasn't so rigid that anything would throw me off because it wasn't in my agenda of what I wanted to happen, or I didn't plan for it, or it got in the way of what I wanted to do. So there was that lunar aspect, right? The two sides of the tree of life, right? It's finding the proper balance. And we do that by being in our practice. And the tree of life really exemplifies the importance of finding that equilibrium. And so through our awareness, our observation, that's why at the end I said, look within yourself. What's the difference? Do you feel more aligned? Sometimes during the practice, you work with your awareness. That's why the importance of sometimes putting your awareness in your body, so you see the movement, you become aware. Often awareness is 80% there, 80% of getting to where you would like to go, which is a good intent. You put your will and your desire to things that are actually helpful. And you put the discipline to get there. Right? And by putting the inner awareness within, we begin to become aware of the energies that flow in our body and the energies of our thoughts and mind. And we say, wow, it is really a wild horse. And we realize how chaotic it is. And how some of our inclinations really are not the healthiest for ourselves, for our others, and how certain things might be getting worse. But then we also realize there's real sanity within us, that inner cathedral is really a citadel, a castle, a fortress of our soul, of sanity, of divine consciousness within us, that really is always there, that cannot be breached. They could be crazy all around in our mind, in our world, but that citadel is always calm. When we do these practices, we learn to resonate, to feel that energy of that inner citadel. So that energy can radiate out because we are moving closer to it. We're clearing out the obstacles to feel it, to get closer to it. So that calm begins to move throughout our body and our minds, our emotions, and from there out into our world. That's why I always say it's important to start with yourself. Doesn't mean you ignore the world and you don't care what happens. Yeah, you do the best you can, but you realize for us to be effective in helping others and making better things in our family, or working better with our children and helping them through their struggles, we often need to start working with ourselves to gain greater skills and ability, so we have that calm and peace that other people can see and feel. We have that greater wisdom as we align to the Shekhinah, which is our inner cathedral. It's the chariot grounded in our kingdom, which is in our heart. It's actually technically grounded in our foundation. We remember that Yesod, that's our energy alignment. Kingdom is everything physical, manifestation, but the alignment of our energy is in foundation, which gives rise to kingdom. You see, the tree of life directly acknowledges that manifestation is based on a foundation of energy. And so we are working directly with the energy as we find balance in our sifrot. If we anger, we learn to find calm. We have too much fire, we work with water, right? We have depression, we work with discipline to make an effort to get out of that bed, to have a to-do list. We have to push through the resistance of that storm, of being in that neutral place. Go out in daylight, open that window, and little bit, by using the solar energy of effort, the constriction of too much openness, of depression, which is also kind of a constriction, but also it's too much space. So we use the solar qualities to make that effort of momentum to find that daylight. Yes? So we work with the Sifrot. And we learn to work with the energies through our conscious decisions and our actions. We become conscious and precise and intentional in everything we do. We take our seat, horseman on the horse, and we engage directly with the teaching on the Sifrot in the Tree of Life. We look at the blessings of human psychological teachings, which we have access to as modern people, on how to work with mental states that we have, how to help with our emotions to bring us ourselves into balance. Not too much air, not too much earth, not too much fire, not too much water. All these refer to different mental states. All good, but out of balance, we're off. And in a couple of weeks, I'll mention what each one is. It's a way of perceiving the world. These are all ways of seeing things. And it helps us find an engagement on a way of understanding what's going on. And learning, like somebody with too much air is very flighty. Can't settle on anything. Starts something, doesn't finish it. They're in 10 places at the same time, right? So how do you steady too much air? You reduce the air, right? You ground it, right? So more earth. You see how it works? We're learning to work with ideas, concepts, that provide guidance to us on elements that we need to do. So the person with too much air is to realize, I want to do 10 things today. Well, that's a lot. How well will I achieve those 10 things? Not that well, because I'm doing a little of everything, but never finished anything. So I'm going to focus on 2 or 3 things and resist that desire to do more. They speak really fast. Well, they learn to speak more slowly. Watch their words, be more intentionally. When they catch themselves speaking really fast, they take a breath, find that inner awareness, that still point within, which they're developing through their meditation practice, right? And they're able to fall into a more open space, and they are become more mindful. They're mindful because they start seeing the eyes of the person in front of them sort of blanking out because they're overwhelmed with everything they're saying. They see it and like, oh, I'm doing it again. Look at this, the person's lost their intention. I'm overwhelming them. Or they're pulling back and they're shutting down because there's too many emotions, too much energy shooting at them. And they realize the stuff, they realize it, they see it, and they slow down. Do you see how it works with our awareness? Because when we turn our intention within ourselves, and we learn to do that for our practice, we become aware of our energy. And when we go out into the world, we're able to see it in others and in ourselves. And we're able to acknowledge and have the skills on how to work with it on the spot. See? And it becomes subconscious at some point. Just naturally, you align. Your wisdom doesn't need to make as much effort. All you need to do is see it, and you pull back from that situation energetically, and it just falls into place. And that's something we're headed towards, that alignment. But right now, we're consciously looking at ourselves and making those intentional decisions on how to align. The road could be rough, but we're in our truck and we're moving the steering wheel. We've got better and better suspension. And as we learn to navigate, we're like a truck. It becomes even, regardless on how bumpy the road is. We're no longer the pinto around the road, which is collapsing, falling into disaster left and right, and needing tune-ups, because we're better drivers. We've learned to master our bodies and our energies, and that pinto has become the truck. It's not that we get out of the pinto and pick up a truck. We become the truck. The pinto becomes the truck becomes the Ferrari becomes the Learjet becomes the starship. It's our evolution. The road throughout may look exactly the same. The road may not change at all. But our ability to navigate it changes. How we engage and how we perceive the road could change. We could also make better decisions that we go off on different off-ramps. And in fact, the road does change because we're no longer headed in that direction, but we're heading in different directions, which could lead to much, much better realities where the road and our individual world, our individual environment, and each of us has our own individual world we live in, our families, how we engage, what we do, don't do, where we live, the language and culture we're in. Those are all individual. And how we perceive and act in it is individual to each one of us, right? But we can make changes, which in fact makes the road much more pleasant, to the point where we don't need necessarily both hands on the driving wheel. But the road also could be just as difficult. But because we live more in our awareness, we have the windows open and we're sipping on a milkshake and everything's calm and better because we are engaging with it in a different way. So one of the skills that I discussed is working with mantra, recitation of the divine name, and seeing how that energy affects our bodies. And we worked on anchoring our awareness in our bodies as we recite the name, and we began to notice how the name, the energy of the name, caused relaxation and balance, and how that could release tension, move energy in a better flow, and open our awareness, where we could just sit in an open space where time seems to stand still, that requires no effort. Create a space that is such that it affects the entire energy that in the room we're in, even if the room is quite large with high ceilings and there's other people in it. Our openness is such that it affects the people in front of us, that they become open, that the incense rises in that room straight up with no flinker to the left or right. It is a straight incense going straight up because the vibrations are completely still. The energy within becomes the energy without. We're no longer subject in receiving energy. We're emanating it out. You either receive or you put out. And it's really to the extent one receives or emanates, to bring out of oneself, right, to an action and a manifestation. And we learn to be less affected. Doesn't mean we don't care, and it doesn't mean we don't act to it, but it's less of a wave that balances around. We more exert or influence, like a swimmer swimming through a wave. There is a force to it, but we not so much get blown back. We are able to move through it. We part it. And we influence the wave by our engagement with it. And so we learn how to bring that into our daily practice, into our daily lives, on the spot. Because we've done it at home, we develop the ability on the spot, and we learn different names of God, which have different frequencies and a different effect on us, to use the right name in the right situation, to have the desired effect to bring us back into balance, or to bring balance into a situation. But you learn to say it inside of you, and you learn how to radiate it out. But you also learn different ways of radiating it out. That it doesn't necessarily blow out, or people are even aware of it. And I want to make a very important point here, which I've made in the past. Every name of God contains every other name in it. Let me say that again. Every name of God contains all the other names in it. That means it contains all the actions of all the other names. So if one's more healing and one's more electrical current power, that doesn't mean that can't be healing as well, or more wisdom, or more spacious. Sometimes a name shifts, but some names just are very much in one way, but that doesn't mean it doesn't necessarily have those other qualities. But it could be that certain qualities are more present. And that could change with time as you work through certain energies that name presents for you. And as you work through it, the divine energy and presence of a name of God may change the frequency to something else you need to work with. Often people end up sticking with one name for years or for their whole lives. But at the beginning, sometimes it's helpful to learn different ones because you kind of can't tap into everything of one name. And there's just certain names that you're not quite to get the same effect because there's just so much energy in that name. It's very much something. But one comes to understand the qualities of it. Or you come to work with 2 or 3 names depending on the situation. You become proficient on working with the energy, with the horse. Horse symbolizes energy. It's a very esoteric teaching there. One day I will go more into it. But it's the energy. We learn to ride our energy. So we're riding our sifrot. We're working with our actions, our mitzvot. We make sure our actions are aligned with what's correct and proper, are aligned with the guidance that God provides through His commandments, the 10 commandments, right? And through all the other guidance that's provided in the Torah, in the Tanakh, guidance that's provided by prophets or by high priests, people who are in alignment, who give guidance through their spoken word or through their example of their lives. Very inspiring to see high levels of devotion, even when they're subject to persecution. The strength involved is praiseworthy and sometimes mind-boggling, but it shows the level of devotion, absolute devotion to God, to the Shekhinah, to the guidance, to the central column of riding that horse in alignment with that divine will. It's the pulling back of ego, of what one wishes, to one where one is being called to. But that's a very high level of practice. But at some point we begin to resonate more and more with that inner pull within us. And it's not the messed up pull of our karma, of our sifrots out of balance, but it's a deeper voice, that inner voice that we've always sort of heard in the back of our minds but can't quite resonate with. It's that pull, that subtle current, that Shekhinah, that's was it just a tiny little river because it's so buried. The Shekhinah that lives in our inner cathedral becomes louder, and we could feel the movement of it, and we learn to slowly bathe in it. And with trust that in fact it is good, that it's pure, that it doesn't come up with out of alignment shifrots, we begin to realize that's the central column. And we learn to swim in it and bathe in it. And at some point, we allow it to start carrying us. We become like a boat. We're no longer swimming with our intention upstream, downstreams. We're trusting the flow. So we're in a way getting into a boat, and we've begin to trust it so much, we throw the oars or the rudder. So the oars are the pieces of wood that we could row, right? That we can control the boat, make it go in a direction. And the rudder is that sort of lever that moves the boat to the left and the right at the back of the boat. I say this for non-native speakers. These are all specialized English words. So I want people to all understand and not having to go on ChatGPT or Google to get it, proper definition of the word. So we learn to give up the control, and we learn to listen and being able to be in tune with that divine flow, which we find when we're able to sit in presence, when our mind becomes calm, when the rider comes to hear the energy of the horse and realize that it's wisdom with a capital W, that it's trustworthy with a capital T, that it's not off. This is a horse that's come into balance. Not every horse is in balance. There are some crazy horses out there, very dangerous horses that can't be trained, or horses that were so poorly trained that they're just really off. And if you just let go, you'll get lost. But you've learned to find that inner horse within you by balancing your mind, your emotions, and your sephirots. Your horse becomes purified. Your mind learns to come to heal. And you realize that by your work and effort, your inner horse, your inner energy, becomes something that becomes more and more reliable. Because you're not so much riding the solar horse or the lunar horse, or partly lunar in this situation and too much solar in that situation, and the water is a little here and the fire is a little there, and sometimes it's great and sometimes it's really off. You've come into balance, so your horse is living in the Shekhinah, in the central column. That's the objective. So we become like an eagle. We learn to fly. In Native American, all probably indigenous cultures, I would say, all over the world. I've seen it in so many different places. Beautiful teachings, mind you. Beautiful teachings that are grounded in nature. So much to show us, guide us. But I'll share, no need to go into that. There's some traditions that are really off, so be careful. An eagle is a beautiful animal, flies really, really high. I think it's the bird that flies the highest. Powerful. Its eyesight is shockingly acute. Sees everything clearly. I think a small mouse from a mile away or something across an open field, something really way beyond our ability to see. And precise, comes down and just hits it with great force, great precision, highly skilled hunter, but it only eats what it needs. Very protective of its family, very maternal to its chicks, and just soars effortlessly. Doesn't need to move its wings too often. Knows how to work with the currents of the wind. If you see it up in the sky, you see how it just turns in circles and around, and if it wants to go higher, it knows how to angle its body so it goes higher without moving its wings. And when it goes lower, it has confidence in the speed it's able to have. It's a master, incredibly wise, very awake. If you see them in the wild, it looks back at you if you see them in the zoo or in the wild. we can become the eagle. All our efforts working with the Sephiros, psychology, yoga, acupuncture, psychiatry with psychiatric medicines, antidepressants, all necessary. Please don't think I can do these practices and I don't need that. Use both. All my teachers said use both. I say use both. Why in the world don't you avail yourself of modern medicine? I have a friend, loved her dearly, followed her for years on Facebook. And really worked the walk to try to help people the best way she could. You know, she didn't do a lot of the discipline. And after watching her for years, she always kind of ended up in the same place with the same, you know, we all have our issues, but she didn't change. Not enough of what I call the right wing of the horse, right? R-I-G-H-T, my accent's getting in the way here. As opposed to the left wing, there's the right and there's the left, right? So the right wing is all the effort you put in, like I've been discussing, the practice, making an effort to change things. Putting in the practice to meditation, putting in the effort of engaging directly, yes? She practiced mainly the left wing, esoteric. Great. Work directly with energy. But not mantra, other things, not discussing here. Beautiful things. But it never went from an ungrounded, energetic place into a manifested place, which she applied into her life. Do you see the application aspect? Applying it into her life. Taking it, the inspiration and the guidance and the deep energetic healing, and manifesting it into actual change. Right? It's interesting. That was another level to her which I wasn't prepared to talk about, but it's so important. It really shows the balance I wish to show. Because at the very end, I'm really going to hit to a very advanced teaching, and I don't want people to misunderstand it. There's a danger to presenting this teaching that people may not understand where it fits. So I guess this example really kind of shows where I'm kind of heading towards in a way. But the point I want to make with regard to her, and I was very sad when she died. She didn't want to use modern medicine, and she had something that was curable by modern medicine. If she went to the doctors, used probably more advanced medicine and maybe some radiotherapy, I'm not exactly sure what. And she tried more plant-based things. And I heard by the time she got and realized that it wasn't working, it was too late for the modern medicine to work. And she died. She could have continued to help people. She had a light that was very beautiful for me to watch. And I found it really nice to follow her on Facebook, and gave me an insight in the beautiful, beautiful world she lived in, which was away from civilization, and gave me access to something that was magical, which gave me blessings in my life as a sort of something to look at that was very different to the hardships I was going through. And she helped people there. That's gone. And her life gone. It's so important to do both. She could have done the more, what's it called, homeopathic, the more, working with roots and all sorts of things and fruits, and you know what, a lot of our medicines are based on those very things. But we also have modern medicines. You do both. If something has a side effect in the modern medicine, there could be a root or something that helps balance out that side effect. Of course, work with your doctor to make sure it doesn't affect what you're taking medically. But I want to say that, but there's a lot of people who said, oh, it's modern, it's harmful, radiation. I'm not commenting what to do, but I've heard, and it's subject to what you're doing, so I don't want to really get involved with that. Oh, radiation, it ends up killing you. The radiation's harmful. Yeah, and it could maybe give you another cancer in the future. I don't know anything about that, but the cancer you currently have could kill you today. Do you see? So you get into radiation's dangerous, yes, but what's also dangerous? What you have. And the fear of it makes you not realize that the radiation therapy that exists today is very different than the therapy existed 20 or 30 years ago. Right now, the radiation is so directed and so precise at one really, really small location, it doesn't affect anywhere else in the body. But the fear of it is such that you don't educate yourself or ask your doctor or even go to the radiologist to really get an understanding as to what the modern treatments are. So I kind of want to say that because it's all about working with your wisdom and your balance, and realize there's a place for the action as well as something that's more open and homeopathic, but it's also very precise. You take the wrong homeopathic, you could become really ill and even die. Those plants and those roots are very strong. So there's a balance. I don't know, I kind of digressed, but I guess this was important to say. And so she followed too much openness and really not enough constriction of using an understanding of intellectualism to really ground herself into more earth and being a little safer. It was a lot of lunar. So you see the balance, beauty of lunar, but then the problem is too lunar is too open, and then reality could come crashing in. Reality that you don't want to face because that's bringing in negativity. Oh, that's being negative. I don't want to bring that into my life. Well, it might already be in your life, right? So mantra helps bring in that balance. Mantra could help heal things, help heal energies, because it's all based on imbalances. But we don't learn to only do mantra to heal something. I had a teacher very sick with cancer. He did the radiotherapy with the mantra practice. And let me tell you, it was beyond advanced. He still did both. It made the radiation that much more effective in curing what he had. Does that make sense? And what he had was very serious. But yet, full recovery, no relapse. He works with both. So we need to work with the skillful actions of overt actions and also work with the energy of things. It's the left hand with the right hand. The left wing with the right wing. Working with energy, working with the sephirotes, working with mantra, working of being calm, but with the right wing. Good action, good mitzvot, study, Torah, learning. Not just with esoteric on the left. It's the union of both. Working with the right wing creates a very strong left wing. If you're not grounded, God help you when you go into energy, you'll become off. So they work together. Working together, you become like the eagle. Highly wise, wisdom. It's the Learjet, my friends. You soar. It's effortless. Those jets, look at them up there. It's effortless. There's no turbulence. It's just flying fast. They're above the turbulence. Now, the analogy doesn't always fully hold up because we can go through life and have a lot of turbulence, but we have the stability that we are like the Learjet at 50,000 feet, while everybody else has been shaken up and the turbulence is incredible. We are the calm presence in the middle of an earthquake, in the middle of a storm, because we are living in our stability, in our central column with wisdom and awareness that things go through us, don't affect us. Anger hits the wall behind us. There's nothing that it catches in us, anger directed at us. We look at the person and we actually feel compassion. We're not triggered. We're like, wow, so angry. The hatred. And with our having the awareness, you actually see a child sometimes that was beaten by his father. And yes, you know which parent beats him. You literally see it in the energy. And you're like, wow, that is an abused adult. There's an inner child that has rage in here. And you see it so locked in that the person will never deal with these issues. Doesn't even see it. And he's in a place that you can't even mention to him because it probably hit you. But you see it, and therefore your heart doesn't react in anger. You react with wow. And it doesn't mean you bend over, and it doesn't mean you're overly nice, and it doesn't mean you can't speak up for yourself. But that means you're not triggered, so you see the wisdom on how you need to deal with the situation. But you learn to work with the energy through certain practices. The energy is on working directly with your energy that ensures that your sephirots on the lunar and solar rays stay in balance. You learn how to anchor yourself in this central channel so when the winds blow, the world shakes, you're in front of anger directed at you, rightfully. Hey, we could all mess up, or incorrectly, but it's been conveyed in a way that's completely not skillful, right? We can address it through our Learjet or our starship that is anchored in the Shekhinah, in our central channel of awareness. We live through our heart chakra and our third eye in connection to Hashem through our crown. And we act in accordance with that. We speak and manifest throat chakra. We are able to manifest our truth. Throat chakra, third eye, crown chakra, which is always based in compassion to ourselves. Doesn't mean we necessarily don't engage even in a more direct way with the other person, but we are always based not in anger but in wisdom. So compassion, it's wisdom in action, but wisdom is always in balance. Yeah. So when we focus in our practice on presence, we learn to become aware and awake. It is essential to what I'm going to speak about next. So what happens if we learn the left wing of the eagle? Instead of trying to rebalance and balance through our intent, the right wing, we begin to allow balance to happen naturally. And that's the power of mantra that I want to speak about today. So instead of intentionally rebalancing the Sefirot through actions, which are essential, we need to do both of what I'm about to talk about and what I just talked about. Both, please. Both wings. An eagle cannot fly with just one wing. So instead of adjusting things, we learn to just drop into the mantra and the flow of the mantra. And the resonance of the divine frequency allows everything to align effortlessly, because we're bringing in divine frequency directly into our energetic body. We're not so much working from the outside through our actions, our thoughts, mitzvot, but we're working directly with the energy which gives rises to the mitzvot, like I've said, from the inside out. And mantra is a living force. It's conscious, it's aware, it rebalances by itself. And when it's done correctly, and increasingly it becomes more powerful as we practice it, it realigns all our energies into the central column, into our Kundalini channel, right? Without us needing to fix anything directly. This is an advanced intermediate to an advanced teaching and beyond. So we need to work up to this. But this is where we're headed. There are people listening of all different levels. But as we move along the different steps of our ladder, the different rungs, RUNGS, of the ladder, we become increasingly proficient to be able to work into that moving stream and learning how to navigate and live from that Shekhinah river, living increasingly in the chariot. It's not a blind jump. We can't just blindly jump because we have too many forces of an imbalanced tree, Sefirot. We are not in really fully the chariot. We sort of think we are, but we're not, and we're pulled away by a wild horse. Oh, it's aligned. Oh, yes, if I think it's aligned, then it is aligned. It's my resistance to not trusting that puts it out of alignment. Ooh, yes, that's a very dangerous thinking. But if you do your work, yes, your resistance to not believing and letting go is what's going to throw you out of alignment. When you've done the right wing well enough that your horse is well trained, lining up with wisdom, that is the Shekhinah actually manifested. Do you see how the same teaching could be a pure poison or pure wisdom? But it's something one needs to move into. Yes? So as we're learning to experience this shift, we're using the mantra, the recitation in the name of God, on how to understand how to move energy. And we're learning not to do anything when we're reciting it in our practice, in our homes, right? In our homes, in a quiet place, that's where we learn and do. We let it go and allow the mantra to do its thing. Our job is just to say it. And relax, feel the energy. At the beginning, it's helpful to say it out loud. then increasingly you will see it's going to become softer and softer. And sometimes it's a minute or two where you say it out loud, and then it suddenly trails off. Or, it's a couple times you say it out loud, and then you begin to realize you're just barely mumbling it. And at some point you realize, with the practice of weeks or months, or very quickly, that you're saying it inside. And interestingly enough, like I've said for the last year or two, the most powerful mantras are the ones that's said inside. It's counterintuitive, I know. But we learn, and it comes effortlessly. You slip into it. Don't try to be at a level that you're not. I point out all the different levels. So when you come back to these teachings in months or years, you will find where you are and where the next step is. And you might not even understand what I'm talking about now. They tend to be self-secret. If you aren't in the place to fully receive it, it could seem out there. By God, when I received or started hearing these teachings when I wasn't ready, it felt out there. I'm like, whoa, what are some of these people smoking? Oh, that's great, but I don't think that's possible. But as you move along, you begin to get tastes of it, and you realize, hold on, this is what they're talking about. Oh my gosh. And you start moving in that direction, and then you start realizing, oh, this just isn't in books. Or, I thought he was way beyond me, or so special, and realized, no. He was saying, oh, everybody can do it with time, and I'm beginning to realize, oh my God, even I can do it. And things start to fall into place on their own. You don't make a decision to jump into it and think you will be in it. You make a decision to get on that freeway, do those practices, get on the off-ramp of what you're currently doing, which, if it's not working, maybe the off-ramp is a good place to go. If you feel it's leading to a good place, so you have to use your judgment always. Even with my things, use your judgment. Don't just take things at face value. Use your mind, your intellect. It's trustworthy, it's not trustworthy. You work into it, and the road progresses naturally. You just drive down the road, and it naturally will lead to these things. Don't think you could jump from where you are to over there, unless you're far enough along, and you will know if you are. You will know. Trust me. When you're in the place where you can just drop in and let go of that fear. But then when you're early on, it is good to be fearful, because you have to do those practices to create that stability. You're working with yourself as the rider. The rider has to be aligned, and you're working with your energy and your mitzvah and your karma and your imbalances. So as you work with it, your energy, which you're riding, becomes in balance as well. And then the two together works one entity in alignment with Hashem, which becomes the chariot. And then you're just riding the flow of life. It's a great symbol of the starship. And when it's in perfect alignment, like any starship, nothing could really throw it off. There's no more gravity. It's moving through the space of life. Mantra is the core of that. Mantra is Shekhinah in movement. We use the name of God because those frequencies, those sounds, with the blessing of being some of his names, as they all come pretty much from the Torah and the Tanakh, as manifested through him, through God, contains the blessings of divinity. So they line us up to that divine flow of the central column. And we learn not to adjust anything manually. We just allow the mantra to work. And we begin to notice how things fall into place on their own when we stop interfering. Meaning, in our practice, we do the mantra and stop interfering. That doesn't mean we do that in our life. Our hands need to be in the pot, so to speak, working with our lives. That's the right-hand path. But we're also working with the left wing, where we do energetic work, which helps line up all the effort, all the mitzvot we make in the right. The mitzvot in everything naturally becomes easier to do and more in our nature to do. Because honestly, when we are in proper alignment with our energy, we naturally do those things. We're naturally more compassionate. We naturally want to pray. We naturally want to go to services. We naturally are in communion with God. It becomes effortless. And that's the last step. We learn how to transcend, to move beyond effort. This is when we're hitting advanced levels. So we have to work through each level. Okay? This is the 8th gear, my friends, where you buckle in. You have to work through 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 7th gear. Then you pop into the 8th, and there's no more gears. You become the eagle that just flies. You become the horseman that just rides. You necessarily don't need the reins or the saddles because you're living in the Shekhinah and you're one with the divine flow. So this is the fruition teaching. Okay? But there's a lot of steps. You need to learn how to walk. You need to find the horse through our practice, right? Learning to find our energy in our channel and what it is and what a horse is and what, the tree of life is and what Kundalini energy is and our chakras and all that good stuff to have an understanding of the balance or imbalance of the sephirots. Too much water, whichever element you have too much of, too much fire, and we all have our balances, our imbalance, and we do have a certain combination of them, which means when we're in balance, and nobody has exactly the same combination, right, of balance. It's what sets our personality apart from everybody else's. We don't all become the same. We're definitely separate individuals. We are not all one. That's not, no. We all have separate souls and separate destinies and separate lives. And each person can make a different decision on different situations and each be in alignment. Yeah. But then not. In certain situations, everybody might engage with the same level of compassion. But given certain things, somebody might wish to engage, or somebody not feel called to engage, or realize they need to leave it, or change it or don't feel called to, because that's not exactly where they're oriented. Does that make sense? But let me get back to the point. So there's a level of teaching which, as one works with mantra, one is able to engage with rather quickly in comparison to working more with the right wing of our ego, of ourselves. In a way, we're an ego learning how to fly. We're all eagles. It's just we're learning how to fly, right? So, as we grow in elevation in our spiritual religious maturity, coming back to our birthright, resonating with that inner cathedral that we're learning to excavate and clean and purify, right? Working through actions, the right wing of ourselves, we become more permanently anchored in the central column, the central channel, where karma no longer has a foothold on us because there's no identification with movement. There's no longer winds of energy that throw us off, of habits or anything else, impurities in our sephirots that throw us off. We transcend, move beyond. Transcend is move beyond. Doesn't mean we push it away. Doesn't mean we ignore it. Is that we move beyond. We are moving to a higher frequency of being. We even transcend mitzvot. I know, shocking concept, but because we have transcended it. I'll get into that in a moment. We're learning to trust the process of our alignment through working through the divine name. So in Jewish thought, teachings, mitzvot, the commandments on what one needs to do, right actions. It's more than the 10 commandments. It's a whole, what one ought to do is a direct means of connection, clinging to God, devakut, of being in alignment with Him. And it's so important to do right actions of performing mitzvot. It's the right wing of our bird. That's why I stress so much the importance of it. It's essential. Okay, absolutely essential. I'm highly conservative in religious things on the importance of it, because it's very dangerous to go into other things if you don't, you're on the right path when your actions become better and better, purer and purer, and more in alignment with God. That's the signpost on the side of the road that you're on the right road. You don't become worse, you don't become angrier, you don't become more violent. If you do, you are on the wrong path. Do a U-turn. I mean, literally get off the freeway and go in the opposite direction, because clearly it's not the right direction. Period. So a signpost is that your mitzvot becomes easier to do, becomes better and better, because you're aligning with divine will by doing these actions, working with the intent to do it. You in turn realign yourself more with the central channel, with God's will. That's the importance of doing them. You subjugate yourself and I want to do this, but by me doing this, I'm in alignment, and I help gear myself into more direct alignment by obedience, by saying that's the right thing to do, even though I don't wish to do it. That's very, very, very helpful. But as one works more with energy and working with mantra, there's less of a desire not to do it. There's less of a resistance to being compassionate and loving, or not going into anger. It becomes more effortlessly. And we begin to align with the divine will. And we become like sparks of holiness in our world, in our families, in our environment. Because we start reaching a state where we're able to live more and more in the divine presence. We begin to walk the steps onto the divine chariot. And it's a framework that's beyond action or reaction, refinement, polishing, or correcting something. We have less to correct in ourselves because we're entering into that balance. So the function of mitzvot as a means of ascending becomes unnecessary because we're literally becoming the incarnation of mitzvot. It becomes effortless. So there's no need of an intent to do it because it becomes natural. And it's even a thought. We just do it. And people might say it's mitzvot, but we might not even know what that word means. We're naturally just embodying the flow which calls us to do these things. We're in the flow. Mantra is a very powerful tool because as we say it and as we begin to realize by having our intention inwards, that naturally our thoughts subside and we enter into presence. This is working directly with energy. It's the left wing of our eagle. It's extremely powerful because we're working directly with the energy, which naturally leads us to do everything that we're called upon on the right wing. But we always make sure that the right wing is being done as well. But at some point, we're just the eagle. And both wings are in balance and they work together. It is the fastest path. Our energies, our minds, our thoughts, our emotions ride, R-I-D-E, my accent's getting in the way, ride our basic energy. Everything rides on foundation. Oh, beautiful little chart. If I can pull it up. Yeah. Program ceases to work. Yeah, it's when I switch too often. Oh, here we go. I'm clicking the wrong thing. 1 second. We're working directly with the Sifurot, the foundation. It's what everything in kingdom rests upon. It's what makes it so powerful. It's the building block of everything. In our lives, in our thoughts, even in our world, atoms and everything else is energy on which everything else rests. That's the power of mantra. It's what makes it the easiest way to go into the final frontier of our lives and our living and our spiritual attainment. So performing mitzvot, we find our souls, we find ourselves, and aligns us with our divine will. not our divine will, aligns us with the divine will of Hashem. Unless we're completely aligned and a completely perfected being, our will is not divine with a capital D. It's off, even if it's only subtle. So we have to be very careful. So I'm very glad I misspoke, so I could make that very clear. We are not the incarnation of divinity, unless we are one with God, and that means we're completely pure, and I'm going to get into that. So we need to be very careful here. We enter into alignment of the Shekhinah of God. Doesn't mean we are the river. We become part of the river. We may lose where we begin and where the river begins. We become wet, right? We become part of it. We're no longer floating. We become the river, but we don't ever confuse ourselves as we've created the river. We may flow and be lost in it, but our sense of self dissolves. So we no longer think of ourselves in that way, but we're still ourselves. You see, it might be confusing, but at some point you'll understand. So we reach a state where we fully rest in divine presence. We no longer live in a framework of our actions or reactions. It becomes beyond thought or refinement, or needing to correct ourselves through tikkun, through our keeping with the commandments, and the of our actions. And the function of mitzvot as a means of ascension becomes unnecessary. We learn to cleave to God. We learn to have an attachment to Hashem. We learn to be in divakut. It's a state of deep spiritual union where one's entire being, mind, thoughts, actions, energy is aligned with the divine presence, the chariot. It's often the goal of mysticism, where the ego, our sense of unaligned, impure selves with not aligned actions, an idea of separation, dissolves. And we become fully immersed in divine awareness, actions, energy. Doesn't mean we disappear. It doesn't mean we lose who we are. We just become the purified aspect of ourselves. We become the purified aspects of all the elements that we have when they're imbalanced. Some people are naturally more earth. Some people are naturally more fire. Some people are naturally more water. What we are becomes imbalanced. We don't all enter into the same balance or into the same person. We're all distinct individuals. If you look in the Tanakh, the prophets, the saints, they're all different people. They all have different issues. Their manifestations are often different, and how they go about it sometimes is different. How they connect with God is sometimes different. It's individual. But they're all living in alignment with divine presence. How it manifests in them is different. They all have personalities. They have what they like and dislike. I'm sure they had certain foods they preferred, different people that they preferred, different ways of living that they preferred. Some of them could live in palaces. Some of them were hermits, and the hermits would never wish to live in a palace. And the person in the palace really had no desire to be in a hermit, and it wasn't his life calling. Would have been very, very, very in disobedience to God if he had moved into the hermitage, because that wasn't where he was needed. and vice versa. That hermit could have been a horrible leader. That wasn't where he was meant to be. Do you see? Nor was he where he desired to be, and it's not where he would have thrived, because the balance of that personality wasn't there. But sometimes when you enter into balance, you realize you're not where quite you need to be, and that hermit might have needed to go out into the world, into a temple to teach. And that's where that alignment, when he entered into balance by spending that time alone, was where that alignment made him desire to be, and realize the wisdom of his life was to be there, because he entered into the Shekhinah flow. And the power of mantra, of that divine residence of reciting a name, enters us into the balance that we honestly all seek by doing mitzvot, by attending services, by praying, by trying to be better and better people. It's essential to do those acts and be in that desire, while at the same time, because you've been exposed to these teachings, realize the importance sometimes of just reciting the divine name, because that energy naturally clears everything that's in the barrier to walking the steps up into that divine chariot, or being partially in it, not fully in the center of the stream. But just having the smell of the fragrance, the feeling of the humidity, or hearing it, or just seeing it in the distance is a huge blessing. And as we walk the steps up the ladder from a beginner, just learning, feeling overwhelmed, because we all have felt overwhelmed, especially when sometimes when you see things above, like, I don't know how I'm going to get there, or it's hard to work just spending 5 seconds and being in presence before your mind goes to something else, and you're learning to bring it back each time. And the bringing back each time is learning. That act of bringing it back, that's what meditation is. It's not being in the center and in the open space and focused on your intent with a light focus, right? That's not necessarily meditation. It is. We call it, we had a good meditation, but it's not quite the right way to say it. But we were like, wow, we're really meditating. Yeah, we are in a way, but the act of meditation is when you bring the mind back. So by bringing the mind back, you're meditating. It's not like I'm not meditating, I'm being discursive. It's when you realize that you are not focused and you decide to become focused, that's meditation. They're both actually meditation. But sometimes we have the misguided notion that if our mind is out there and spinning, we're not meditating. That's not true. Spending the time with the desire to bring the mind to heal, to riding our horse of awareness, that's actually the meditation. The second you light your incense and your candle, you are meditating. Our whole life is a form of meditation, or can become, when we go with the intent to have good mitzvot and to align ourselves with the Shekhinah, whether we are successful or not. But with the passage of time and that desire, we become increasingly more successful. And then we move through the stages of being a beginner to an advanced beginner. It starts getting really interesting when we are beginning level intermediate to an immediate intermediate, an advanced intermediate. Wow. Then we really start soaring, because we're no longer really, we're we're starting to walk into the Learjet. Our Ferrari has pulled up to the airport, and we're ready to take off. And we're just like, wow, this is a wild, wild ride. And then you realize you wouldn't want to do anything else in this world. Then take the time to be on the spiritual sort of train while you're doing everything else you're doing in your life. You don't necessarily let go of your life and dump your family and go off into a cave. You learn to bring everything into the modern world. You learn to engage in a different way in your world, and you learn to take the time to further yourself on this train as it leads to the Shekhinah river. And you wouldn't want to be on any other train. And it's not pushing your life away. It's not dumping everything to the side. It's taking it all with you. Your family, your life, your job. You might need to change your life. You might be in a very abusive relationship and you might need to leave. That doesn't mean you just take it all. But in your wisdom, you learn to assess and have the strength to work with what's workable and the wisdom of knowing what's not workable. And what is not, actually really shifts because your ability to navigate it increases. You become the truck, can handle more, go on certain roads that you couldn't before, and therefore lead to a destination you wish to desire, to attain, because you have the capacity to get there. Or have the wisdom to turn off a road which you should not be on because it's leading to a cliff. You see? And so as we learn to cleave to God, to live in Devakut, that deeper state of spiritual union, a deeper state of alignment to the chariot, brings our entire life into a better alignment. And we're happier, more fulfilled. Our life becomes technicolor, bright colors, bright sounds. Our bodies healthier. Our normal selves, right, is finally getting what we always kind of were searching for, but didn't quite know how to find. And it's by entering into a greater alignment with the truths of balance, which God represents, which Hashem embodies, we're actually attaining everything that everybody in society wishes to have, which is happiness and contentment and fulfillment. But we try to find it in all sorts of other things which come and go. They're impermanent, or they're hard to reach, or when we do, we're unsatisfied. This actually leads to true satisfaction, true happiness, but in a very, very different way than our modern world would like us to think it is, or what we really, truly wish to have, and how to go about attaining it. This is the path of the right wing and the left wing, which truly leads to what our soul desires. It's not merely giving things up or taking time from our day from things we might wish, especially at the beginning, we were doing instead, but realizing the importance of doing it because we feel the change in our lives. And when we look at the goalposts on the side of the road, we're actually living in better and better mitzvot, better and better actions in our world. And we're healing ourselves and our world. So we're seeing we're headed in the right direction. And we're feeling lighter and happier, more aligned. Things are less of a struggle as we move into the truck, into the Ferrari, into the Learjet, into the starship. And we're like, wow. And as we live more in the Shekhinah, we actually can feel God's presence and guidance. And we feel unconditionally held and supported and loved. That goes beyond any sort of support that we can feel from this world, because it's divine. Our family comes and goes. Friends come and goes. External support comes and goes. We've all had period in our lives where we feel alone, where we don't feel seen, we don't feel called. But as we learn to cleave to God, we realize that God is unconditional support. He knows our failings, but He wishes us home, and He engages with us in compassion, not judgment. We think there's judgment, and there could be like, yes, you're doing it not quite right. But there's also the good father aspect, that He points the right direction. He encourages us. He doesn't necessarily judge. He just says, well, it's not quite the best thing. How about more like this, or go here? It's not outright, you're bad. I don't want anything to do with you. We begin to realize the Shekhinah is healing. The Shekhinah doesn't have judgment, because judgment rests on the past. It's forward-looking. Well, you're here now. How about off in this direction, where we heal our past bad mitzvot, where we raise our vibration, where we find forgiveness and a desire to do better. That's the path. And we come to rely on the unconditional love and support of Hashem, which is not breakable, which we always had, and we were never divorced from it. We just couldn't quite resonate with it, and we couldn't find that we were maybe worthy of it. Because, my dear friends, we are all worthy of it. The decision is, do we wish to embrace what's our birthright, and to turn to God and let go of our resentment or our misunderstanding of Him, our thoughts that we are rejected, because there is always an open door to re-engaging with Him. I've cited it before in the past. It's really in the Torah. Divine mercy, divine reconciliation is really beyond our human understanding of what it can be. It's really, really expansive. The Shekhinah and our guiding towards it, by working with energy, we realize that there's always that inner cathedral. Presence of God always lives within us, otherwise we cannot be alive. We would not have the spark of life that animates our bodies. Simply not possible. But it's our ability to resonate and make it flow through our whole body, through all our channels, in our thoughts and in our actions, that makes us the rider on our horse, makes us that boat that just floats through the river of that divine chariot and takes us where the divine will wishes to take us. And it's a wild, wonderful journey, and we realize we don't necessarily need to have the oars, the paddles, or the rudder, that piece of wood that guides us to the left or to the right. I guess starboard or port if you do little those terms because God is guiding our chariot. And we're really, really loving the direction that it's going in. Because we're loving it. There's still us to love and to be happy with where we're going. There is enjoyment. We are not being erased. It's not nihilism here where we dissolve into nothing in the divine way. No, we are a human being and we are loving the path. And we're loving the energy we're feeling. And we're loving that we feel reborn into a new way of being. Into our birthright, into our alignment of all the shifrotes lining perfectly. And we're living in the central column. We are no longer living to the left or to the right. The divine chariot has descended into our kingdom. And we have ascend, gone up the Sephiroths to Keter. And it comes back down. We are the fulfillment of Jacob's ladder. There's no more a ladder. The up and the down and the up and the down just works. We have let go. We are living mitzvot. We no longer need to make a decision to do it. There's no longer an effort. We naturally do it. We let go. And it just is. It's no longer an action. It's a way of living. But to get there, it's helpful to do mitzvot. It's good. It's really good. So it's working with the energy of our left wing, the most powerful practices that they are, period, which brings everything into balance. Very important to remember to work with the right wings, which creates and heals our karma. Which creates good mitzvah, heals our imbalances in a different way, which makes it easier for all the energetic practices we do, yoga, acupuncture, mantra, working with the energy, and it creates a feedback circle of the left wing with the right wing, which causes us as eagles to soar ever and ever higher, with greater and greater ability to soar effortlessly up or down without having to move our wings, because we learn to balance in the flow of our lives, the turbulence, the wind directions, the up and the down, and we have clear, amazing seeing, eyesight, our wisdom eyes, capital W, we see clearly. Clear seeing with a capital C and a capital S, which rests on divine with a capital D, wisdom with a capital W. This is a fruition teaching. And we become a tzaddik, which means a righteous one. And I would say that's a capital R and a capital 0, because a capital O, righteous one, because it's a thing. It's someone, a tzaddik is someone who's completely righteous. For capital R, and walks in full alignment with a capital A. So when I use capital letters, means it's literally the perfected embodiment of what that word means. not wisdom in making or alignment in making. It's literally the alignment, the wisdom. It's literally the embodiment of righteousness. That's why the capital R is used. It's a perfected being. What I have called the Emmanuel, 100% Emmanuel. Now there are levels. You can be a righteous one and do amazing, very, very hard things to do and live in actions that take a lot of guts to do because they might put you in danger. Right? So there are levels of being an Emmanuel. This is a full tzaddik, is a complete 100% Emmanuel, literally an embodiment of a Hashem here on planet. So there's different levels as we're still refining ourselves. There could still be traces of ego or struggle, one's desire of certain things which are not fully in alignment or in the flow of the Shekhinah. But there's also other people that's fully gone beyond, transcended any impurities, and they operate completely from a divine consciousness. A tzaddik gamor, a completely righteous person. One who's completely in the flow of the river. There's no longer a boat. They're completely underwater of the river. The Shekhinah is above him, below him, in him, to the left or right. And he's so in the presence that he's in the complete flow. He's learned to let go. But the letting go is at the end of the path. It's a level of fruition, of complete attainment. And he's in that as himself, the complete purified person that we've decided to work towards becoming. It is a decision, my friends, because we have to forego things that are not in keeping of that. All the temptations of this world throw us off because they're not where we need to go. It's bad temptations. So we should hope to have good temptations to become better people, to find God. But it's not a temptation. It's almost a desire. You're not being tempted. When you say you're tempted, there's an implication that you're being tempted to do something that you not should do. So you're not giving in to those temptations. You're deciding to align yourself, to move in the direction of aligning yourselves with divine will, with a capital D and a capital W. And so a tzaddik gamor is the highest level, where one transcends one's personal, not purified will, and merge directly into the divine will, which becomes your will. Because we naturally know what we ought to do, and what we ought to do is the divine will, which is, we naturally would want to do that if we were purified. So it actually becomes us, not something outside of us. It's the purest form of who we are. And our cleaving to God, devakut, becomes constant. We're always connected, we're always supported, we're always loved. We always receive divine guidance, we always know what to do. We're in the flow, we don't have thoughts, we just do. Why do we do it? We don't even know. We've let go. Give you an example. You can walk through a town, not know why. A city of a street. You don't practice this. It happens, and be careful. You don't do it where it's reckless. You hurt yourself. I wouldn't suggest anybody do this. But at some point, people will realize they're doing it. Careful here, red flags. But to give an example, red flags, red flags. Don't go beyond where you're able to. You will crash and hurt yourself. But one day, somebody could find yourself called to be in alignment, to be like, you know what, I'm just going to let go. But the person decides to do it in a safe way after many, many years of practice. Yellow flags here. Just go off in the street. And you're like, oh, I'm going to see where I'm going to end up. You're walking. You go off into a side street that you necessarily have never walked down. Safe side street, and it's daylight. And you're going off, because you're practicing, right? You don't know exactly where the calling is. You don't know if you're fully in the river, right? So you're cautious, and you're going off, and you go in front of a storefront. There's a person right next to you. You don't know who the person is. You don't know anything about them. You're not getting any sense from them. And your mind just feels to say something. You've done a lot of practice. And you just say it, and you feel called to walk away. So you say the thing, and you walk away. And then you look back at the person, just to get a little feedback, and you see their mouth is open, their eyes are bolted open in shock. And you know in your heart that is exactly what they needed to hear, and they're absolutely shocked some random person would just actually say it. And you realize you've been divinely used. And you begin to realize there's something else going on here, and there's a flow. And you realize it's a wild ride, because you would never think that such a thing would be possible. But you know it's possible because you've read it in books, you've read it in the Tanakh, in the Torah, but now you're beginning to realize that somehow it's living in you, and the world starts looking a little magical. And that's when you start aligning up in the divine will. And you start listening to it, and you realize that the decisions actually help yourself and you help others. But you're very careful and you're very mindful, and you're making sure, because there's still a lot of energies flowing in a person. And you can't be fully sure whether it's an off energy or an aligned one. But as you work with the divine names of the mantra of God, you're naturally aligning yourself with that frequency. A divine name is a form of the river, and you're learning to have it more and more penetrate and heal yourselves. So you're focusing on the mantra and less on the actions. Some people only focus on actions. Some people only focus on mantras. It's really a combination of both. You work on fundamentally working with your energies while you work on external actions. You do both. And the divine name starts rearranging one's impurities, cleans up what we call one's soul, makes us pure, though the soul at its very essence, our inner cathedral, is always pure, mind you. But we're clearing off all the schmutz and all the dirt and all the everything grime and all the dust and oily stuff on top of it. So we're clearing and rearranging one's soul, right? To get to the core soul, our brain, our consciousness, our emotions, and we're bringing it into the alignment. We're no longer needing to walk as we walk in the upper, more advanced levels, in a path of refinement or purification anymore, which is a lot of the beginning and intermediate levels as we learn to align ourselves more directly with the central column, with the Shekhinah. In the advanced level, we begin to transcend that journey, and we learn to let go as we transition from a Learjet up into the starship. And in that state between the Learjet and the starship is when we learn to take the leap. Every step of the way has a certain leap of faith. We have to trust as we're being guided to the next level. But once we're in that level, we realize it was correct. But at some point, we need to immerse ourselves in the Shekhinah, but that's not something we do at the beginning, because there's so many things going on with us, and we need to work on the balancing and our alignment. Our chakras need to flow in alignment. We need to work through our issues. Do you see here? The path has steps. You cannot go off and jump off a pier into choppy, stormy ocean and not expect you're not going to drown if you don't know how to swim. And saying, oh, I'm not going to drown because I think and that's what's going to happen, that's not based in any reality. That's actually delusion. But when you go further along the path, doubt that you're in the Shekhinah will throw you off. It'll disturb your alignment with it. You have to trust the flow, but you've done so much work and you've tested it with small, easy things, and you've grown in confidence that in fact it's not some distorted energy or a distorted thought or some subtle form of ego that's not in alignment with what ought to be done. You're beginning to trust that you are a master horseman, and your horse is aligned and pure, and alignment with the energy, that the situation becomes trustworthy, divinely trustworthy, with a capital T. You trust that you are in the chariot, not thinking you are, not pretending you are, not having one foot in and one foot out, or clinging to the side in desperation, but you think you're actually in it. And therefore you try to ride it and you get thrown off and you get hurt because actually you were off. So it's a road. It's the most beautiful and exciting road that anyone can be on. I truly feel it is the reason we're on this planet. To walk ourselves home to God, to Hashem. I believe it is truly why we are here. It's the path of compassion. It's the path of love. It's the path of aligning ourselves home. And our home is to Hashem. Our home is Eden, a perfected place in which we live in alignment and in presence with God. That, I truly believe, is the purpose of a human life, to return into our alignment, even while we're here, and become the living embodiment of Shekhinah, of someone who's a fully perfected tzaddik. And it's a process that we're walking each time we decide to do a mitzvah, to do what's right, an action, to read and study the Torah, to listen to teachings, to practice charity. And even if you can't, you say a prayer, a name of God, and you direct it at a person and hope that blesses them, or say a prayer to God, Hashem, please bless the person. That's an act of charity. That's an act of compassion. Even if you physically can't do anything, because you're sending your practice and your ability and connection to hopefully engender a change in their lives. You're sending foundation, hoping it will affect their kingdom. And that's a path of an Emmanuel, to the extent you're able to do, until you become an Emmanuel with a capital E, fully perfected. And it's the highest path. Your devakut becomes constant. It's not even a cleaving. You're in the flow of it. You've let go of the holding because you're simply in the river and you're in the divine flow. We don't need to walk the path of refinement or even the concept of what enlightenment is. We're simply in that state. We enter into a state of consciousness, and we enter into it through our actions, right wing, and our practices, both right wing, and I suggest the mantra practice, to really work with it. We learn to live in divine harmony. We embody the mitzvot in ourselves. It's sometimes described as existing beyond mitzvot. It's not because we reject them, it's not because we don't do them. It's because the person has become the very essence of mitzvot. Attained full spiritual realization, free from any inclination towards sin, and lives in a constant state of divakut. But along the way, we can become righteous people who still have struggles, but we genuinely can overcome them with time. And that's the path of perfection. When we enter the intermediate to the advanced, intermediate into the advanced, we've already become levels of righteous people. People that we can be proud of ourselves, but we're still polishing. We're still working. I've gotten way ahead of my notes, so let me just quickly read and finish this up. So we need structure, purification, discipline, and right actions to have that gradual refinement, that general purification. You cannot skip this step. You cannot take that quantum leap into transcendence. Okay, that's for 99.999% of the people. If you're that 0.01 or that 0.001 that can do it, there's certain people that just can go right there. Very, 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 very rare. Most of us have to work through it. Our world is so hard. By the time we've gone through, and our parents and our society, we've gone through childhood, we all have our issues that we really need to go through. We're just impacted by so many things. The foundational work is essential. And then once you hit a certain level, you no longer need to go step by step. You've worked through those steps in the ladder. You no longer need to balance everything manually. You simply rest in the divine presence and everything aligns itself naturally. You're in the flow. Any impurities, as you get closer to the river, naturally take care of themselves. You don't need to make the effort. You feel it naturally being purified as you walk through, because naturally you're doing things more and more of an alignment. You're in the upward spiral, and just like the right wind effortlessly lifts that eagle higher without him to have to bat any wings, because he has that momentum, he has that elevation, and it's effortless to go to the highest level. But to get there, he needed to be cared for and nurtured by a mother eagle, fed, taught how to fly, and learning himself how to become a more and more and better, more proficient in his ability, or her ability, right? It's both, men and women, ability to be able to fly. And children, we're all learning. We apply ourselves, we get the right instructions, we're nourished, we're encouraged, we're fed through Torah, Tanakh, holy texts, examples of saints, by going to services, the songs, the prayers, bringing our altar, our incense. Everything we do feeds us. And we learn to fly. And we fly better and better, and suddenly, before we know it, we're really competent. You'll start feeling really competent, and one of these days you'll be like, oh my God, I'm actually at an intermediate level. And you'll know what that is. You will know when you are. Believe me, you'll be like, oh my God, I can, oh my gosh. And then you're like, wow, this is really something. And you really think you've achieved something, and you really have. And that presence of God that you try to reach for your entire life, but can't seem to get, you're living in it. You're able to relate to that energy. You're able to have a deeper relationship with Hashem. It's everything you sought for. And the path of mantra really is the stream that you're manifesting when you utter the divine name. So you're literally swallowing the pill of divinity that you're seeking, and you're bringing it inside yourself to really create that metamorphosis, that purification at a very, very deep level. And in reality, only the people who walk the path of refinement and stability and get that deep awareness can really transcend everything. The pill needs to work. The mantra needs to work. And you'll see it on your thinking, on your emotions, on your actions. You know it's working because you will change on how you act. If it's not better, if you're not more stable, if your emotions are not more under control, you'll need to do more work. If they're getting worse, then there's an issue. Do you see? You naturally pop into the river through the effort we do. So transcendence doesn't mean skipping all the steps. It means that it's so embodied and integrated in you, you don't need to think about it anymore. It naturally flows. An eagle does not think on how to fly. A dolphin does not think on swimming. A fish doesn't think about swimming. A swimmer in a pool, which I've done for many years, does not think on how to swim. You just do. A runner doesn't think how they're running. They're just running. Right? It's like a concert pianist. Somebody plays the piano. They practice the scales every day. They learn. But if you see a master pianist, they're not thinking about the notes they're hitting. Their fingers naturally hit the right note for that right performance piece. They just hit it perfectly. They literally are the piano. They are the notes. And it just works in union. The pianist, the notes, the keys, the piano become one. They're the rider on the horse of that particular classical piece. In perfection, in alignment, they become one. And that's what we seek to become in the spiritual path. That is what I seek to share with you on how to go about doing it. and the different elements that everybody needs, somewhat individual to each one. So I present many different things. And you might find certain things that you need that I don't share about because I haven't come across it, or it's not something I thought to speak about. But by doing the practice of the mantra, we will receive that divine guidance, that wisdom. We will start having different thoughts like, oh, I never saw it this way. Oh, why didn't I think of that? It's because the wisdom blocks are dissolving. The blocks to wisdom and greater understanding, right? The upper sephirots of understanding, right? Greater understanding are becoming unlocked. So we're seeing things differently. Or we remember something we read 30 years ago. How do we remember it? We have no idea how it's in our mind, but it is. And it actually is like, oh my God, that is a possibility. And you do more research and you realize it's exactly what you were looking for. This is sort of the blessings that come as we do the practice. Mitzvot can create that. It's a form of purification and realignment, but the mantras really do that. I am going quickly through the end of my notes. So why am I speaking about this today? Because we're working more with practice, and we had the Sifrot teachings, and so I felt this would be a good way, a good place. Well, actually, a lot of it came to me this morning. I was going to speak about mantra, and it became a whole thing. And I'm like, you know what? This is good. We've spoken about the divine chariot, and now I could really reinforce it and give an example of the path. The divine chariot is basically the starship. And we're always on the chariot, even if we don't know it. Without us being somewhat in resonant with the energy of the chariot, we wouldn't be alive. And it's the question of being really able to feel it more and more as we walk in the direction of, I guess, that train station. Well, we're always on the train. I guess it's being able to relate and having that train carry us away in a way. But in a skillful way, knowing that we're really aligning with that train. And so what I'm sharing is really to give us inspiration and a sense of purpose of where we're going, and an understanding of the different levels of the path that I teach. And not to get ahead of yourselves, but there's some very advanced people listening. Some of them are way more advanced than I am. And there's people who need to also hear what I'm saying about this more advanced level, because that's where they're at. And this helps them. But for everyone, it gives a sense of direction. This is the GPS map. This is where we're headed. And it helps people stay motivated and not realizing you're going to get lost in endless small refinements, that it's always going to be such a hard struggle. The train picks up momentum. As you get into the river, your boat starts moving faster. It becomes easier. It becomes much easier. The first, at the beginning, it's quite tough to get a sense of concentration and be able to stay and open. Takes a while of effort, but at some point there's really no effort. You do it and you let go, and you could do it anytime during the day with practice. And for a while, when you sit down, you realize the first 5, 10, 15 minutes are hard, but something really happens between, the 14 and 17-minute mark, where just something in your body lets go. And you feel a huge release of energy, all the imbalances. Your mind just can't handle staying still, and something in the mind just, how to put it? It just can't hold it anymore, and the mind just flops. Just lets go, just flops open, and that energy is released. And sometimes my body sometimes just moves forward. Like my upper half of my body just literally moves forward to the floor, just to feel this relief of, I was holding that, right? I was holding all of that energy. You're just like, oh my God, right? And then you're in presence. Divine presence. Hashem is there. Yahweh is there. Elohim is there. You feel openness, and you don't have to bring your mind back. You see, your gaze moves more up, so it's closer to horizontal, and you just rest. Your ears open. You begin to feel the whole room. Your breathing is calm. You don't need to focus on anything because you're literally resting on your mind. The energy is in the third eye crown chakra, and you're open in presence, and you become very receptive. And the effort of staying there is no effort. It's so calming and healing, you want to go there. It helps you through your whole day, and you receive that guidance. In that moment of time, you're resonating with the flow. If you say mantras in that space, you feel the whirl of energy in you, and you feel it go through and healing your body. And those words, the name of God, feels just so strong in your body because in the quiet there's less resistance for it to work through. And it works in deeper and deeper and more powerful ways. And you realize the beauty of the path. And when you go out in the world, you're naturally acting in mitzvot without the effort or the intent, because your alignment naturally embodies the mitzvot. And that's increasingly more the level of the Emmanuel that I speak about. And you let go of the effort of trying to fix yourself with this or that, which is very important at the beginning, because you're naturally polishing. Just by living your life, each day it's easier. Each day you're better and better person. Just by naturally living in the flow, you begin to heal yourself. And you start becoming over-attached and self-improvement for its own sake. Your whole union begins to improve yourself. And that's living in that center. That's living. You really feel that when you get into the Ferrari. It's easier. And there are practices, which I'm not going to discuss, on how one could permanently anchor oneself in the central channel and to live from there. But we need to work on getting there. And then there are ways on how to better anchor oneself. So I hope this is helpful. I found it when I was learning the beginning, when a teacher came and spoke about similar things. I was just wowed and so appreciative, because I found it very inspiring and helpful, and it opened my mind from more limited thoughts of what I thought was possible to something much bigger, more expansive, and actually was very powerful medicine. And it helped take my practice, the way I lived my life, to a whole new level, because I didn't know exactly what was possible. And if you don't know what's possible, it's very hard to get there, because you have these mental blocks that kind of keep you in a square. You think it's only the square, but if somebody points out that there doesn't need to be any lines of anything, and you could live in a flow of divine wisdom, it opens your mind, and your mind relaxes. Your thoughts don't constrain you. Your thoughts don't hold you back as to what's possible and what's not, because you realize there's something really big that's possible, that doesn't confine you, that doesn't keep you small and confined. Just knowing that exists relaxes your chi, your energy. It relaxes your mind. It relaxes your emotions. It clears the karmic blocks, because relaxation of that holding allows energy to flow better, and allows the energy to flow through the sephirots better, and it aligns our tree. And so I wish to present to you that blessing that someone gave me many years ago. I wasn't able to do it. I went in that direction, and it helped me understand very quickly what he was speaking about. And I kept an open mind. And it changed me. And that's why I offer this now all to you. And it provides encouragement when the path is challenging, when we don't want to do it, or when it's just hard and painful, when things from the past come up and we have to grapple with something we've been pushing away, and it's a block. And we kind of have to go through that turbulence to clear it. Saying mantras helps clear it. It doesn't push it away. It's an antidote. It's a medicine. So when that energy with a lot of trauma comes up, when we say the mantra, it's not to push it away. It's bringing in the blessing of Hashem to it. And it helps make it easier to go through. The massage helps make it pass through. It's all energy that we've trapped. Thoughts are basically memories ride on energy. If it processes it fully, it just doesn't really have that hook on us. And actually we forget it. In my life, when I look back, things I remember the most were the most traumatic. Why is that? Or painful, or things I got wrong. Why in the world am I not able to remember spontaneously or throughout the day things that I did right? Why is it always things that were traumatic or painful? Or why is that what comes up? Because they're blocks, and we're learning to let them go. And then we resonate more and more with the sense of happiness and fulfillment and wholeness. That's our birthright. Things which nourished and made us happy, and therefore we're just happy and nourished without necessarily remembering all the things that led to that. So that's my wish for all of us. So I hope this has helped you all. And remember the red and yellow flags throughout. Do not get ahead of yourself. Often these teachings are hidden because there's a danger to them. It's not the sake of hiding things for the sake of hiding things, or living a goodie, a little treat at the end, for people to hope to get one day, if ever. Or feeling special because one knows something that's more hidden than someone else, having access to it. Often they're hidden because there's a risk of misunderstanding it. There's a risk of trying to apply it before it's the right time. There's a risk that it would hurt people because they weren't ready for it. But I think I've carefully as I'm able to, present it in a way to show the pitfalls and the caution that should surround such a teaching. So you get the benefits without real thinking one is able to just jump there. There's a world and a way of being that is so much greater and beautiful than we think there is. There is a world of being when we can live with Hashem in Eden while still being here, because we're in our Shekhinah chariot and living in it as we live our lives. We live in a place of higher frequency. We heal ourselves, tikkun ourselves, and our radiation, the way we radiate into this world, heals our world to Kuonam, and hopefully repairs a very damaged place, restoring our world and ourselves back to Hashem, where it always should have been, and God willing is where we in our world will return. Amen. So thank you for joining me today. Please practice. Maybe take a little break, and maybe, in 30 minutes, if you have the time, go do that practice. We're going to work on mantras in the weeks to come. Now, I think, because we always have new people, I think now this was a good period to re-engage with mantras. And I'll speak more about the different names one can use in the coming weeks, and re-present those teachings. And so maybe in 30 minutes, people, after taking some water and stretching, could spend some time. Or people can go off into nature and try to relax and just hear the quiet in the stream and try to be in presence. And maybe say the name of God, repeating it a few times while they're seated down. And then see how the scene in front of them has changed. Is it quieter? Do they feel more part of it? Do they feel like they're part of nature or what's around them? Or still feel separate from it? And then maybe say the name a few more times, or a couple minutes of what they feel. And then open their eyes and see how things have changed. And you begin to feel how your emotions have changed, or your thoughts have changed, how they've grown calmer. And with time, with this level of practice at home or outside in a safe place, we begin to notice how we're able to maintain that place for longer and longer periods of time after we stop our practice. And then at some point, we begin to realize we can remain in that space 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So may Hashem bless and guide us all. May He help us on our path. May it be easy and full of blessing. Amen. We'll do a practice together on Wednesday or Thursday of this week. I wish you all a wonderful, wonderful week. And thank you so much for joining me today. Bye-bye.